So, the film The MCU, one of the only successful cinematic universes, has been building to such an entire hecking decade. The film The MCU, one of the only successful cinematic universes, has been building to for an entire hecking decade. With 3 completed trilogies and one of the most impactful summer films of all time, that being The Avengers, how does this one fare? Insanely hecking well, that's for sure. I cannot stress how much there is to praise about this film. The characters. Every single one of these characters gets ample screen time, save for minor characters. And my gosh, how satisfying is it to see Doctor Strange, Iron Man, Spider-Man, and the Guardians, save for Gamora, Groot, and Rocket, take on Thanos, as well as the other Avengers. Ultimately, I wouldn't say there's one single group of interacting characters that I prefer to the others, not to mention a certain surprise appearance, and that, while small, is still nice to see, that being the appearance of Red Skull. Another thing to mention would be that these characters do not get off easy. They are put in situations that are excruciatingly painful for the characters. Watching Peter Quill almost shoot Gamora because she made him swear to it is utterly heartbreaking, only to find that Thanos was cruelly messing with his head. Watching Wanda kill Vision, only to have it mean nothing, and to get the same outcome. The closest I came to crying during this film was when Peter began to fade, a boy still in school, who in reality probably shouldn't be there, afraid, clinging to the closest companion he has, all of which is brought together by Tom Holland's absolutely heartbreaking performance. Now, something Marvel has always had an issue with is villains. They're always either pretty good, Obadiah Stane, to being serviceable, Red Skull, to being good, Ego, to being bland and kinda bad. The majority typically fall under the latter, sadly. Thanos, however, is probably the best villain the MCU has ever had, including the Netflix stuff. He is a force to be reckoned with. He pulls a freaking moon down on Tony and gang. The first thing he does is beat the Hulk into the ground. And yet he still has limitations, what with actually having trouble at first with Tony and friends, not to mention the fact that he has actual motivations, he cries. You see him cry, of all things. To say he was a good antagonist is an understatement. You almost understand where he comes from, but the things he stands for and does are utterly horrible. He commits mass genocide. He drops his daughter off a cliff so he can commit said genocide. He toys with Peter's mind, not to mention the things Nebula talked about in Guardians 2. And the thing that makes you dislike him the most, the thing that makes you want to see him get his gut handed to him in Part 2, is simply the fact that it's so frustrating. It's so frustrating to see these good people suffer and make decisions that tear them apart inside, just to see him, Thanos, get to sit down on a porch and watch the sunset. Comic book movies are usually known mostly, aside from having memorable characters and worlds, for having a creative and amazing action sequences. And by gosh, does Infinity War deliver. It sets up so many good action scenes, with memorable beats in each. Thanos pulling apart a moon, Thor showing up and absolutely wrecking it with the battle axe, Bucky picking up Rocket and spinning around, taking out baddies with its automatic in one hand and Rocket firing his own in the other, Bruce attaching the Hulkbuster's hand to what's his face, and sending him flying off into the Wakandan force field. Doctor Strange opening multiple portals while Peter jumps through, kicking Thanos around and spewing one-liners. The list could go on. The music is probably the thing I have the least to say about. It's good, it kicks in at just the right moments, gets loud and emotional when it needs to, but overall isn't quite as good as, say, the Black Panther soundtrack. As for acting, everyone really brings their A game. I can't really point to a performance that wasn't at least decent. As for blatant flaws, I wouldn't say the film has a ton. There may be some that I missed, but really I would say the biggest issues are the pacing, which goes from somewhat slow to being pretty evenly distributed to straight up action for the last 20 minutes. It's not actually quite noticeable at points, and it is actually quite noticeable at points, and it does take you out of the film at points.